The courtroom carried a rare stillness that morning, not the typical quiet from legal routine, but the heavy silence that lingers just before a storm breaks. Everyone in that chamber, jurors, lawyers, reporters, even the judge could feel it, a tension unmistakable. Word had been spreading in hushed tones since sunrise. This time, it wasn't just gossip. It wasn't just statements. There was actual video evidence and the alleged source. No one could believe it, Jay-Z. Diddy remained unmoving at the defense bench, but his attorneys were visibly unsettled, whispering, leaning in, exchanging notes. Clearly something major had shifted behind the curtains overnight. The prosecution rose, composed and cool, holding nothing but a flash drive. Their demeanor wasn't rushed. They didn't need to hurry. They knew exactly what they were about to unleash. "Your Honor," the prosecutor began, voice steady but forceful. "The state moves to submit newly acquired visual evidence private security footage from an event on March 28, 2016, held at Mr. Combs' New York residence." There was no initial reaction from the courtroom. Just a stillness, until he continued. "The footage was received through an anonymous encrypted source. Upon verification, metadata confirms its origin. A server once maintained by SC Enterprises." That was it, SC Enterprises? JC's corporate arm? That name changed everything. The room erupted in whispers. No cameras were allowed, but had they been, that moment would have ignited the internet. The implication struck hard. Jay-Z was now linked, directly or indirectly, to the evidence turning the tide against Diddy. No longer just a fellow mogul, he could be a silent witness. Or worse. Before we get deeper into this bombshell footage, don't forget to like, subscribe, click the bell icon, because this kind of story doesn't come around often. Back in the courtroom, the judge raised his hand. "Has the footage been authenticated?" "Yes, Your Honor," the prosecutor responded. "It has undergone forensic analysis and aligns with the architectural blueprint of Mr. Combs' residential security setup." The defense instantly objected. Unauthorized surveillance, chain of custody, privacy breach, prejudicial impact. But the judge was unmoved. "If it's authentic and relevant, the jury has a right to view it. Proceed." Then it began. The lights dimmed. The screen flickered. To life, a grainy, black and white timestamp marked the beginning. A grand foyer. A parade of guests. Laughter, dancing, recognizable A-list silhouettes, blurred for privacy, but unmistakable. This wasn't just a party. It was power in motion. At 23 minutes in, the atmosphere turned. A camera angled from above caught two men talking near a massive staircase. One of them was clearly Diddy, the other obscured in the shadows. No audio, just gestures. Diddy pointed upstairs. A young woman barely in her 20s approached. He whispered something, then passed her to another man. She was escorted upstairs. No questions, no announcements, no fanfare. But it didn't end there. 18 minutes later, the same young woman came back down, alone. Her face was pale, her makeup smeared. She paused at the final step, then moved down a hallway like she was searching for someone. That was the last glimpse of her on tape, and she wasn't alone. The footage continued. 3 more women, each taken upstairs that same evening. Different men, same pattern. Their faces are unsure. Some held onto purses like shields, others wrapped their arms around themselves, each time just moments before. Diddy was caught speaking to someone. It wasn't violent. It wasn't explicit, but it was undeniably calculated. When the screen went black, the courtroom didn't erupt. It froze. Everyone locked in place. Then the judge leaned back, speechless. Diddy didn't move. His eyes dropped to the table. His face gave away nothing, but the stillness. That said everything, and that's just the start. The silence that followed was solemn, funereal. The footage had landed. Like a bomb, sacred and terrifying. This wasn't a twist. It was a full seismic shift. Even the most seasoned legal veterans, courtroom artists, seasoned journalists, analysts who had covered O.J. Epstein. Weinstein looked shaken. No one expected this. The most damning piece of evidence hadn't come from a victim or a leak. It had come from the very center of the music empire. From Jay-Z's servers, his cameras, silence. The judge adjusted his glasses and slowly turned toward the defense. Diddy's legal team looked drained. One leaned forward and whispered urgently into Diddy's ear. He didn't reply, just kept staring down, as if the truth had always been there, waiting to be read. Then came the next blow. The prosecutor calmly asked to bring forward a new witness, someone who had never before spoken publicly, former staff member from Diddy's private events team. She'd been subpoenaed the night before, right after the footage was authenticated. She took the stand with a quiet gravity. "My name's Kayla Foster," she said, trembling. "I worked as an assistant at Mr. Combs' events from late 2015 to early 2017. Her voice was shaky until she looked at the jury. Then it steadied. "I just saw the footage," she said. "And I remember. That night, I saw girls being led upstairs. I wasn't allowed on the upper floors during events. We were told to delay or distract guests who asked to leave early." "What did that mean, comfort them?" the prosecutor asked. She hesitated, carefully choosing each word. "We were told to offer them drinks, hugs, and reassurance. If they cried, tissues. If they panicked, calm them. No rides were to be called unless approved. Usually someone from security. But everything ultimately went through Sean." The juror covered her mouth. "And did you ever see a guest return after going upstairs?" the prosecutor asked. Kayla looked down. "One. She came back crying. Her friend had already gone. No phone. I offered help. But my supervisor told me to step away." "What exactly did your supervisor say?" Kayla's voice cracked. "Stay out of it or you're next." The defense objected. Hearsay. Speculation. But the judge stayed silent, staring at Kayla. The courtroom felt less like a legal arena now, or like Judgment Day. Objection overruled. "Did you ever hear Mr. Combs give direct instructions about any guests?" "Yes," she replied. "Once a girl was screaming." "Let me leave," she said. Sean looked at her, then at security, and said, "Fix that. No yelling, no panic, just power." The jury sat frozen, unblinking. "Why are you speaking now?" the prosecutor asked. Kayla's lips quivered, but her answer came firm. "Because the footage showed what I couldn't say. It saw everything I couldn't prove." The prosecution rested. The defense. They didn't even cross-examine, and underneath it all was a quiet, haunting truth. This wasn't just about Diddy. It was about a system, an industry, culture of silence, of unchallenged power, and of young women discarded like whispers. The judge called a recess. Twice, but nobody moved. Not because they weren't allowed, because they couldn't. They knew they were witnessing something historic. And the proof had eyes. Even during break, the courtroom wasn't truly empty. People stepped out for air, coffee, to call editors, but mentally, they stayed trapped inside those flickering clips. Inside Kayla Foster's shaking voice. When court resumed, the prosecution returned with quiet confidence. They had one last piece, small, unshakable. "Your Honor," said the prosecutor, "we request the court hear an audio recording previously deemed inadmissible, but now verified to align perfectly with the footage presented yesterday." Another shift. Footage was one thing, audio. It was personal. It revealed tone, fear, presence. It made it real. Lights dimmed again. No video, just sound. Laughter, glasses. Clinking, heavy bass, vibrating the hall. Then came a woman's voice, shaky, nervous. "I don't know where she went," the man replied. "Calm, she's fine. Stay here." And Dash whispers close to the mic. "Urgent. Don't go up there. Don't. Just trust me." The jury sat like stone. Even the defense had nothing to say. No objections. They knew. No explanation was needed. The fear in that voice said more than context ever could. The audio ended only 26 seconds. Silence followed. Then, unexpectedly, Kayla returned to the stand. She hadn't been called. Requested it herself. "I need to clarify something," she said, more grounded now. The voice at the end that said, "Don't go up there." That was me. She hesitated, and at that very second, everyone in the courtroom leaned forward. That was me. A pause. Then a subtle wave of gasps across the gallery. I had no evidence at the time, only a gut feeling. But that night I saw far too much. The missing girl was found later outside, crying, barefoot, without a phone. I asked her what had happened. All she said was, "I should have listened to you." One juror turned visibly pale. Told my supervisor. 3 days later, I was reassigned, banished to the basement, doing inventory, no more contact with guests. Shortly after that, my access was revoked. They told me my contract was being reevaluated. I was never called for another Diddy event again. At this point, the courtroom no longer resembled a place for legal debate. It felt more like a tribunal of truth, not a place of rage, but of reckoning. Then came the final strike. The prosecution stepped to the bench, holding a lone sheet of paper. "This," the attorney announced, "is a verified text exchange between Mr. Combs and a private contractor dated the morning after the party scene in the footage." The judge gave permission for it to be read aloud. Diddy's text, "Everything quiet?" The contractor's reply, "Handled. No phones, no press." Diddy's final message, "Good. Keep it that way." But the courtroom didn't explode. It imploded. The jury no longer glanced toward the defense table. They were heads down, pens moving fast. One juror folded her arms tightly. Another tapped his pen rhythmically, in sync with the rising pressure in the room. Even journalists couldn't keep up. Typing, and Diddy still unmoving, but no longer composed. Gone was the confidence. So what remained was calculation. His hands weren't relaxed, they were clenched. His sharp, tailored suit now seemed like a shell armor straining to hold underweight. This wasn't just testimony. It was a pattern. It was preparation. It was proof. The prosecution sat without fanfare. Not in victory, but with quiet certainty. They knew the room had turned. The narrative had broken free. The judge adjourned for the day, as the crowd filled out Tinto media vans, flashing cameras, and sirens. One unspoken truth hung in the air. This wasn't just about Diddy's fall. This was about a man who built his world behind locked doors in a world that finally dared to knock by the next morning. The atmosphere had changed entirely. No longer a buzz, it boiled. Reporters didn't whisper. They swarmed. Security had doubled. And still the line outside the courthouse wrapped down the block. Something had detonated. The footage, the audio, the texts. Now the world wants answers inside. The air crackled, charged, dangerous. Diddy's legal team arrived first, silent, disheveled, desperately trying to look composed. They dodged the press. No statements. No defense strategy. Only damage control. But the gravity of what was about to happen became undeniable the second the judge entered. He looked not only stern but deeply troubled. His robe perfect, his face unreadable, but his posture said it all. He had seen enough, and still the prosecution wasn't done. They approached, no theatrics needed. "Your Honor," the lead prosecutor said, "we call to the stand a witness referenced in a previously sealed affidavit. A woman who attended multiple events and has agreed to testify publicly." She entered not young, not elderly, mid-30s. Plain clothes, composed face. But her eyes, they carried the weight of years buried in silence. She took the oath. "My name is Michelle Rivers," she began. "I was a contract security consultant, hired through a third-party firm. Worked multiple private events hosted by Mr. Combs from 2014 to 2017. She was assigned to tech support and surveillance management, and that made the courtroom go silent. She wasn't a guest. She was inside the machinery, not just watching the party, but watching the watchers. I monitored the camera feeds, logged room activity, managed entry logs. My job was to observe, and I saw everything. Her story came out slow, controlled, precise, chilling. I was there for the March 28, 2016 event featured in the footage. I can confirm. The hallway. Camera upstairs was not part of Diddy's official system. It was an auxiliary setup. installed discreetly by a guest concerned about personal safety. The courtroom shifted. Reporter dropped their pen. J-Z. His name wasn't shouted, just stated like fact. And that made it hit harder. He told no one, only his head of security and one tech. That tech was me. She looked toward the jury. I was told to keep the feed off-grid, stored only on an encrypted drive. Only 3 people had access. The prosecutor stepped closer. Then why is it appearing now? Because someone in Jay-Z's inner circle watched the trial unfold and realized this footage could save someone's life. The courtroom froze. The defense erupted. Slander, irrelevant, speculation. But the judge raised his hand. Overruled. The jury will hear the full testimony. And so, she continued, I saw girls taken upstairs, some crying. I saw them return quiet, changed once. I saw a girl carried out, unconscious. I flagged. The clip was told not to archive it. Who told you that? An associate of Sean Combs? Not directly? The message was unmistakable. She faced the jury. I want to be crystal clear. I never saw Mr. Combs commit violence. But I saw a system. I saw a protocol to preserve silence. The jury was rapt. No longer jurors. They were witnesses to an empire's design. Secrets didn't just happen. They were protected. Michelle closed her testimony with a final haunting statement. There were nights I went home and cried because I felt complicit. I watched people disappear behind doors and come back broken. I told myself I was just doing my job. But this, she gestured to the evidence table, is the first time I feel like I'm doing the right thing. No reaction, no claps, just the stillness of a courtroom that understood something heavy had shifted. The prosecution rested. Diddy still didn't move, but his posture was breaking.
Oh.
He didn't look at the witness or the jury, not even his lawyers. He sat in silence. And that silence, once power, now sounded like guilt echoing through stone. This wasn't just testimony. It was an autopsy. Not of a crime, but of a structure built to bury truth. And the court could feel it. This was historic. They weren't watching a trial. They were watching an empire crumble. One reluctant truth at a time. Then came the final witness of the day. The prosecution rose gently, aware of the weight now settling over every word. Your Honor, said the lead attorney, we call an operations assistant from Say Enterprises, currently under federal protection. Another Jay-Z connection. Heads turned. Tension spiked. A woman in her late 20s stepped forward, expression blank, posture tight. Her title, Internal Data Infrastructure Technician. The kind of job that hides in shadows but sees everything. My name is Isla Anderson, she began. I handled encrypted digital access logs and storage distribution across enterprise servers from 2015 to 2018. The jury looked confused until she added, which includes the hidden camera footage submitted to this court last week. Silence. She remained calm, precise, unshakable. This footage did not leak by accident. It came from a restricted folder, accessible only by biometric scan belonging to 3 profiles: Jay-Z, his chief of security, and 1 ghost-level alias. She looked directly at Diddy. That alias was registered to an account tied to Mr. Combs. Gasps. But no noise. Wait. Are you saying Diddy knew about the footage? Yes. He might not have expected it to surface against him, but he was fully aware of the camera. In fact, she continued, he accessed the encrypted file 2 days after the event. The judge sat upright. The jury scribbled furiously. The defense whispered but had no move to make. Everything was time-stamped. Verified. The camera was pitched as VIP security. In reality, it was about control. It's about surveillance. About leverage. Who had that leverage? Technically Jay-Z. But only one person downloaded a backup. Who? Sean Combs. The courtroom sank under. The weight? Still no screams. Just realization. He didn't just allow the system. He used it. He watched. And he said nothing. Isla delivered the final blow. 2 weeks later, he attempted to delete the archive. The deletion failed. Flagged as corrupted. That's the only reason this footage still exists. The only reason the world knows what happened is because a deletion failed. That one line thundered through the courtroom like a storm crashing through silence. And as Isla stepped down, the atmosphere didn't return to normal. It couldn't. From this point on, no one would ever see Diddy the same. Not as a celebrity, not as a mogul, not even as a man caught in legal turmoil, but as the architect of a machine, one he couldn't escape when the gears began to grind. The judge called recess for the day, and outside the courthouse a crowd had already gathered. Not just reporters, not just flashing cameras. There were fans, survivors, critics, and protesters. They weren't chanting. They were watching, waiting, because this wasn't the conclusion. It was the beginning of a reckoning, and Diddy's silence. It no longer felt like a mystery. It felt like evidence. The next morning, when the courtroom doors opened, the energy had changed. It wasn't a curiosity anymore. It was conviction. The world had already begun writing its verdict. But inside, the legal war still raged. Diddy sat at the defense table, pressed suit, upright posture, calm gaze. Anyone watching closely could see it. The mask was crumbling. The prosecution didn't raise their voices that day. They didn't have to. They had spent the last 5 days laying bricks, witness after witness, clip after clip, a fortress built from digital receipts. And now, they weren't just aiming to prove guilt. They were aiming to destroy the illusion of coincidence. Your Honor, the lead prosecutor said quietly, "We would like to present an internal memo recovered from a confiscated laptop once used by Mr. Combs's former executive assistant." On the screen, a document appeared. Clean, professional, corporate, just text, but the text bled. Event debrief, confidential summary. Media exposure, contained, guests, satisfied. The third-floor suite. Cleared with no residuals. Jay's concern, neutralized. Security, reset. No longer a threat. The jurors leaned in, rereading. One of them underlined that one line, Jay's concern, neutralized 4 times. What does this mean? The prosecutor asked. The digital forensics expert replied. It shows this wasn't a reaction. It was a protocol, a plan. They had a system for cleanup. Not if something went wrong, but when. Was Kay a guest? Possibly. Or someone who spoke out. Someone they had to silence. And was the footage successfully rerouted? Entirely. As mentioned earlier, one file survived, moved to an external ghost server. That server belonged to Jay-Z's private archive. That was the footage. It's the one shown in court. This wasn't just a record of what happened. It was proof of what they expected to happen. A playbook, plan for damage control, a ritual for burying truth. The judge announced a 5-minute break, but no one moved. Not the gallery, the jury. It's not even security. Everyone just sat, stunned, still. When court resumed, the prosecution had one final blow prepared. A former house manager, one who had disappeared from the public since 2017, walked in. No spectacle. Just a man with tired eyes and years of silence packed. Behind his ribs, he adjusted the mic, spoke simply. My name is Ethan Price. I worked as the estate operations manager for Mr. Sean Combs. In 2014 to 2017, I coordinated the staff, deliveries, VIP logistics, surveillance systems. I saw everything. His tone didn't rise. It didn't need to. I was regularly told to shut off hallway cameras during major events, not just for privacy, but to avoid overlap with external recordings. Did he say that directly? The prosecutor asked. Ethan looked down. No, but one night, a girl ran out the back exit crying. Mr. Combs looked at me and said, make sure no one remembers that face. You could feel the air fall out of the room. What did you do? I erased the staff log, deleted her name from the guest list. That's why no one ever found her. Gasps. No apology. Just the truth. Why are you speaking now? Because I can't unsee it. I can't keep pretending I was just doing my job. You asked earlier if there was a system. I helped build it. I know exactly what it was. And then he ripped off the veil. It wasn't a party. It was a pattern. The room didn't echo. It was absorbed. Sentence lodged into the wood, the walls, the minds. The prosecutor let it settle. No theatrics. No spin. Just the weight of truth. Diddy sat frozen. The judge recessed for the evening. But again, no one left right away. Not like before. Because this wasn't about proving guilt anymore. It was about reckoning with the system that had hidden it. And the women who never walked back down those stairs. Every piece had led here. The whispers, the clips, the voices, the cover-ups. And now, with the courtroom trembling in quiet anticipation, the prosecution announced the most critical submission of the trial. The lead attorney approached with a thick folder in hand. Your Honor, we request to present recovered footage from March 28, 2016. Timestamp, 1246. A.M. Previously corrupted, now fully restored with audio. As the courtroom inhaled and held it until now, they'd seen shadows, blurred faces, silent corridors. But this was different. This, said the prosecutor, is the turning point. Lights dimmed. The screen came alive. It opened to a third-floor hallway, dim, quiet, lined with ornate doors. A young woman emerged, one who had entered the house with a group of guests earlier that night. She hesitated, approached a door, looked back nervous, reached into her purse. No phone. The door cracked open, a low voice, smooth and chilling. Relax, you were invited, Diddy. His voice, not recalled in testimony but captured.
The girls.
Voice came next, shaking. I was just looking for my friend. His reply, you'll see her later. Come inside. No one's going to hurt you. The screen flickered, cut to static, then came back. The girl entered, another man waiting. The doors closing behind them. That was all. But it was enough. When the lights returned, no one spoke. Not the defense. Not even the judge. Because this was no longer a theory. Not an allegation. Not a rumor. This was a reality captured in real time. Proof that the system was run. From the top by Diddy himself. The entire courtroom paused, not even breathing. The prosecutor turned to the jury. You've heard the testimony. You've seen the footage. You've read the documents. And now you've heard the voice. No more theories. No more denial. The man sitting here has been watching us all for years, from behind closed doors. The defense tried to object, but it was too late. Too hollow. The judge didn't even acknowledge them. The courtroom had crossed the line. The point of no return? One juror wiped a tear. Another clenched their jaws. Even the media paused, fingers frozen over keys. Diddy sat still, but not with strength. His eyes blinked rapidly. His fingers twitched. His foot tapped an anxious beat beneath the table. The mask had finally fallen, and behind it a man exposed, not just to the court, but to everyone. Outside, the protests were louder. Survivors from other scandals were speaking out. The internet buzzed, connecting dots once buried. The wave was rising, and the trial was no longer legal. It was generational, it was cultural, and it was unavoidable. As court recessed one last time, people didn't whisper anymore. They left. Knowing this was the turning point, the final day didn't come with drama. It crept in like fog, thick, unstoppable. Final, no one had slept well. Not the jurors, not the press, not even the judge. What began as a scandal had grown into a collapse. And now, as everyone sat back in their chairs, they didn't feel like participants in a trial. They felt like witnesses to history. The prosecution didn't call another witness. They didn't need to. They placed a stack of photos on the evidence table, face by face. Woman by woman. Different faces. Same expression. Fear. Then the prosecutor faced the jury. We end not with new evidence, he said softly, but with a reminder of what's already been shown. The footage, the silence, the structure. This was never about one party or one man. It was about what happens when power decides pain doesn't matter. The judge remained still. These girls, he gestured to the photos. Many never came forward, some never will. But their faces, their silence tells us they existed, they mattered. He placed one final image on the table. The girl from the video, unblurred, real. A. Girl who walked up those stairs into music and came down into silence. He didn't say another word. He didn't have to, because this silence I wasn't afraid. Anymore, it was respect. It was mourning. It was true. The judge turned to the jury. No one questioned what was next. Not even the defense. They didn't speak again. There was nothing left to say. Outside crowds waited. News vans lined the street. Protests held signs. Fame isn't innocence. We believe her. No more silence. I'm somewhere among them. Hidden behind a hoodie, stood the girl from the footage. She never said a word in court, but finally, the truth had spoken for her, and the whole world heard it.